Fatal Attraction is about a lawyer who discovers that one of her old college friends just got hired at the firm that she works at. They catch up, and then he starts to become obsessed with her. Netflix assigned this movie a TV-14 rating, but I feel like it kind of got away with a lot. This movie opens with a man and a woman sitting on the couch, and they're naked, except it has conveniently placed objects that cover them up. It's obvious that they are having relations, and it drags on for a little bit, but then the woman gets up and goes to the kitchen. When she comes back, she can't find her boyfriend, so she goes and looks around and finds him in a tub. She walks up to it, and the tub is full of water and blood, and she screams, and then someone grabs her from behind and pulls her off camera. It then goes to our main character, Ellie, at the law firm she works at. She's in a meeting and discovers that a person that she went to college with 20 years ago, named David, just got hired at the firm. So I wonder who the killer in this movie is going to be. They get to talking. He wants to take her out, but she decides to go home instead. But the next day, he wants to take her out again, and she's mentioning that she's going out with a friend and invites him along. It turns out her friend has to work, so they just hang out and then go to a club. They start drinking, and Ellie ends up cheating on her husband with David. This scene has a lot of them making out and almost going further, but then Ellie stops David and goes home. There's not too much that's too disturbing at the first half of this movie, except David keeps sending Ellie texts about the night. He's following her around and happens to bump into her in the street one day. And this is where you see that he really does have some anger issues, because a car is honking and he starts yelling and cussing at the car. And then Ellie gets kind of creeped out and drives away. So David's behavior starts to get a bit disturbing from here on out. We later find out that David is dating Ellie's best friend, Courtney. They go to Ellie and Marcus's house. David is demonstrating some disturbing behavior where he's talking about how he feels about Ellie, but disguises it as he's talking about his ex-wife. Eventually, Ellie kicks him out. The next day, Ellie can't get a hold of Courtney, so she meets with David in a restaurant to find out what he did to her. He tells her he didn't do anything with her, so Ellie leaves and leaves the record that David sent her at the restaurant, and David breaks it. Courtney goes to Ellie's firm and confronts her about what David told her, because David said that she came on to him and that she wanted to have an affair. And for some reason, Courtney believes this person she just met and started dating over someone she's been friends with for years. But I guess it's just to make it more dramatic. I don't know. After Courtney leaves, Ellie starts doing more research on David and his ex-wife. So she meets up with someone that they were both friends with in college and finds out that David's wife looked almost exactly like her, and that David has always been obsessed with her. The following night, David breaks into Ellie and Marcus's house, but it doesn't show why, because Ellie's daughter comes home, and so she goes into the kitchen, and David is hiding just outside the kitchen doorway, and they have this really anticlimactic scene of, is Brittany gonna find David there? But she never does, because the microwave goes off really fast for cooking a bag of popcorn, and then David just leaves right after that. After not being able to get a hold of Courtney for several days after their fight, Ellie decides to send Courtney an email on all of the things she discovered while she was researching David. So she gets the email, and conveniently David is there, opens her laptop, and finds the email and deletes it. They then have this really creepy sex scene that just adds to the sexual material of this movie, but I'm just gonna move past that. Ellie starts following David around to make sure that he's not doing anything to harm Courtney. And gee, I wonder who sponsored this movie. And next thing you know, Marcus decides it's a good idea to go golfing with David. So they're on the golf course, and David notices that they're alone, and they're talking about their wives, and David starts really creepily talking about loving a person so much that you'd be willing to kill for them. And then he starts walking up to Marcus with a golf club, and they try to make it look like he's gonna hit Marcus with it, but then he just puts the golf club in the bag, and nothing else happens. I mean, if he was gonna do something to Marcus, now would be the time that he should have done it. Ellie then waits outside of David's apartment for 2 hours, waiting for him to leave. And once David leaves, Ellie walks in, asks the receptionist if she could have the key to David's apartment because she's a friend of his and left something there. And the receptionist just gives her the key to this guy's apartment. This building has the worst security ever. She then finds his laptop and is able to break into it because of course his password is her name. At least she was smart enough to know there was an underscore in it. So she finds folders with pictures of David's ex-wife and herself in them, and they're all just really creepy photos. And then David walks in, and Ellie must be able to teleport because there is no way she got that far, that fast, that quietly. So then we have another dumb scene of are they going to find the intruder? And this scene could be kind of intense for younger viewers, but David gets a call from Courtney, so he immediately leaves the apartment. Ellie finally gets a hold of Courtney and tells her everything that she found on David's computer, but of course she doesn't believe him, but she seems slightly suspicious. She then gets a hold of David's phone and finds the pictures of Ellie, and David finds her looking at them, and we get our first scene of shown violence because David slams Courtney's head into the wall, but it's off camera, and it cuts to the next scene immediately before contact. Ellie finds Courtney, takes her to the hospital, and then goes home and tells Marcus everything that has happened, including her cheating on him. David gets the idea that he is going to fake his suicide, so he gets a thing of gasoline, kidnaps a homeless person, puts his clothes on him, and then presumably lights him on fire. It never shows any of this, it just has an FBI agent explaining this to Ellie and Marcus. It briefly shows the body, and it is kind of disturbing to look at. Ellie gets a text from her assistant that she needs to go to the office to sign documents, so she goes over there and discovers that her assistant is dead, and it shows her body with some bloody wounds on it, but it's not too graphic. And then she gets a text from David saying that he's at her house. On her way home, Ellie calls the FBI agent to send cops to her house. So she goes to the house and discovers that Brittany's boyfriend was killed. I don't know why he was here or why they decided he needed to get killed. For suspense, I guess. After she discovers his body, David shows up and is playing the record that he broke in the restaurant, and he glued it together and put it on the record player. And I don't know how this is playing, especially this well, because if you break a record and glue it together, it's not going to play at all. This scene is pretty disturbing to watch because Marcus's entire behavior and demeanor is pretty menacing. Ellie knocks David out and then goes and unties Marcus and Brittany, and they're running to the police cars outside. By the time they get to the police cars, Marcus is gone and had killed a cop in the car. Again, it doesn't show any violence. Like, this movie really wanted to have violence without showing violence, so it just shows the aftermath a lot. David starts dragging Ellie away, so Brittany drives off and Marcus goes after David, and it shows that Marcus is a terrible fighter. Ellie stabs David, and it actually shows it. So this is the first scene that showed real violence in this entire movie. Eventually, they get out by the beach, but they're on a cliff overseeing the beach. So they all start fighting and wrestling with each other. Eventually, David gets thrown off the edge of the cliff. So he's hanging there, and for some reason, Ellie tries to save him, but she's unsuccessful, so he falls. It doesn't show him land, but there is no way he landed that far from the cliff. So now that David's dead, Marcus and Ellie decide to sell their house, and that's how the movie ends. This movie doesn't have really any language in it, aside from a few minor swear words. The thing that would push it to a higher rating is that the entire tone of the movie and David's character is pretty disturbing and menacing. And although this movie doesn't show a lot of violence, it shows the result of the violence. So it has a lot of bloody images in it. The sexual content and scenes of this movie is what really pushes it over the top. Although it doesn't explicitly show anything, it's really obvious what the people are doing, and some of it drags on pretty long. So this movie could have gotten rated PG-13 for disturbing behavior, bloody images, and sexual content. But I feel like the sexual content is enough to push it to an R. So I think the MPAA would give this movie an R rating for some sexual content. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like so YouTube can start noticing my channel. If you want to see more videos based on movies and their MPAA rating, subscribe. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at MovieMortalYT. Thanks for watching.